decided I had to change my life. So I decided to sign up into the military. And then after the military, I was able to go into the New York City Police Department, and I rose to the top of the police department fairly quickly. I was a commanding officer of the 67th Precinct. I was the first black commander there in the history of the New York City Police Department. You follow the law, you can succeed. I'm talking about L. Look for opportunities. Whatever you want to do, look for your opportunities. Then the A is you gather information and analyze it. And then the W is work toward getting it done. Welcome to Corey Pegues Live. I'm so happy to announce that my book is coming out. My book is online now. Everybody can go order it. There's the cover right here. Once a Cop. We got to plug this. You can go to simonandschuster.com, order the books, Barnes & Noble, and a whole bunch of other things. But today, I'm happy to report I got a very, very special guest. Mr. Ya Amin, who's the founder of the Human Rights Committee of Justice in St. Louis, and also one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter out in Missouri. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
So now I just gave a little bit of background on you, but I mean, I'm very excited about this whole interview, you know, us reaching out to each other to set this up. Why don't you give some historical perspective on you and how you even got involved in these movements and the stuff that you're doing now?
That's what's up. So I've been an activist all of my life. So back in 2014, when Michael Brown was murdered, I founded the Human Rights and Justice Committee, and there was talks about also establishing Black Lives Matter in St. Louis, Missouri. And so, you know, we saw a need for change. And the way that brother was murdered and executed, we couldn't just stand around and not do nothing and speak up and speak out against those types of injustices against our people. So this type of stuff has been going on for quite some time in St. Louis, Missouri, with the racist cops murdering unarmed black men and women. And we just got fed up, man. You know, some of the residents, they got together and we got to talking and protesting, and everybody from everywhere just came, you know, from all over the world, just kind of supporting us, and the communities came together, people that we wouldn't have ordinarily, you know, intertwined with or built any type of rapport with. You know, we all came together. We didn't care where you were from, what set you was from, what you was claiming, none of that. We came together for the support and solidarity of the Michael Brown family. You know what I mean? Michael Brown Jr., rest in paradise. You know, shortly thereafter, Michael Brown Jr.'s best friend was murdered, and his best friend was murdered. There hasn't been any investigations on this.
Now let's just be clear. His friends weren't murdered by cops, right?
Correct. Michael Brown Jr. was murdered by cops, and his best friend and his best friend's best friend was also murdered mysteriously. No one knows what happened other than they had a shot to the head and they were shot in a vehicle. And so this is mysterious stuff that transpired, no other investigations. So we would only conclude that the cops did it. I mean, there's no other way around it. We saw things here in Ferguson, in St. Louis, Missouri, leading up to the time of the indictment, when, even after the indictment, post the Darren Wilson, he never got indicted, so we know that, right? But once that indictment came, once that verdict came down that he wouldn't be indicted, you know, you had the burnings of the buildings and the businesses and the vehicles. These are all systemically and set on fire, right? They were systematically set on fire. No one from the Ferguson community did that, right? The residents in Ferguson didn't do that. So we've been dealing with that. Then you got outsiders that came in our city, and they pretty much exploited the city. Not all of the outsiders, but the outsiders that were brought into the city. They were paid under the table, over the table. They passed out money to different organizations and people and individuals. When the money came in, people began to scatter. They went separate ways because initially we were all forming a black coalition. Leadership and Justice for Mike Brown Leadership Coalition is what it was called. And that was most of the black community leaders coming together to form this solidarity coalition for the residents here in St. Louis, Missouri, to combat the racial injustices and to seek justice for Michael Brown and the other victims of police brutality here in St. Louis, Missouri. For instance, Kajim Powell was murdered, and I've already mentioned 2 other brothers was murdered. Michael Brown Jr.'s best friend, and then his best friend was murdered. And you had various brothers that had been murdered here in St. Louis, Missouri. You've seen the videos going back from 1999 to the present year that we're in. This was just a partial list of some of those victims of police violence, of executions, so to speak, if you will, that has transpired against our people.
Okay,
and so our job and our responsibility is to speak out against those forms of injustices and combat it head on. No matter your color, no matter your race, your creed, if you're oppressing our people, then that's an issue, and we need to speak up and speak out against that. And that's primarily the role that I've taken on myself, to be the voice for those that don't have a voice, and to expose any forms of wrongdoings and injustices against our people.
Okay, so let me just be clear, because you said some powerful things in that opening, and I have to be clear for the people out there that's looking. You made statements to the fact that
Go ahead and repeat the question.
Hold on. You made statements to the fact that you believe that the police executed some young brothers out there in St. Louis. So I just want to, for the record, let's just be clear, there hasn't been any investigation that led to that, right? These are theories that you came up with, you and your people, you believe, because there was no other investigation, that the police might have had a hand in murdering somebody. We have to clear that up, because tomorrow I'll be all over the internet saying,
sure, definitely,
the police murdered somebody in St. Louis. So let's just be clear on that.
Certainly, we've concluded that this is what transpired. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science to figure it out, right? When most of the residents in Ferguson and St. Louis, we were all waiting on the verdict to come back for the indictment of Darren Wilson, and we were anticipating that there was going to be some form of justice. I knew that there would not be justice for Michael Brown Jr. That was executed by the cop, Darren Wilson. In fact, I tweeted and I talked about it prior to the media even releasing that information on several of our Facebook pages, Human Rights JC and HumanRights.mo. I put that information out there prior to it even ever being released, because I already knew what was about to transpire, and so did some of the other residents here and citizens of Ferguson and St. Louis as a whole. So it's not new to us. We know that Bob McCullough, he has no interest in true justice for our people. I think his brother was murdered by a black person, and he hasn't been the same post that tragedy to his family. So there was never going to be any justice.
All right, so let's talk about that, because that's one of the biggest questions in America right now. My background, that I'm a retired executive in NYPD, so I know how the whole criminal justice system works, especially the cops working directly with the prosecutor's office, which is it's a necessary evil. They have to. I think we all agree that the cops need to work with the DA so that they can investigate these cases. But the problem is these local district attorneys investigating cops that they use for all their cases, and now they got to turn around and indict these cops. It's just a bad mix of blood. So how do you feel about special prosecutors coming in whenever they... Let me just fast forward. New York State now, the Governor Cuomo, has passed a bill for the next year. Any police-involved murder or controversial shooting, a special prosecutor, actually the Attorney General, is going to take the case. Now, that's just for 1 year. So I don't know, like, you know, is he anticipating some cops are going to kill somebody within the year? Because after the year, what happens? Then it goes back to the local DA prosecuting the case. How do you feel about a special prosecutor coming on board when you have these type of high media cases?
You know, I think outsourcing would always be a better opportunity for those that are seeking justice, right? And why go to the back door to your neighbors that you're so familiar with? You know, you have a rapport with. You speak with them, you eat with them, you barbecue with them, you drink with them, you probably sleep with each other's wives. You know, that makes no sense. Of course, the logic is to have an outside special prosecutor come in, someone who has fresh eyes, someone who's not tainted by the local police force or the local politics here, if you will. So I think that's something that certainly needs to happen.
So when we look at Ferguson, after the Department of Justice did a thorough investigation, we found a whole litany of errors that's been going on down there. You're talking about everybody's getting summonses. People that can't even afford that. This one lady got a summons in her driveway because her car, and she was like 80 years old. They brought a new judge in now who pretty much got rid of all the summonses. It was like they was just ticketing people to bring money for the municipality. How's things changed now just in Ferguson, because now they have a new prosecutor, a new sitting judge now. Have things changed a little bit?
I mean, things have changed a very small portion, right? Things have changed a little bit, but things have not changed in the sense of justice for our people, right? The laws have not been changed. The law today still reads the same with the use of deadly force and excessive force. So those laws are still in effect. So no, it has not really changed. Nothing has really changed. They tell you that they're going to give you pardons. They're going to pardon, your warrants, your traffic warrants, your traffic tickets. Instead of sending you to jail, they're going to find you. Or if you're indigent, then they're going to allow you to do some community service, when you should have even had to go to jail anyway, when you should not have even had to pay these large fines to begin with, right? So some trumped up charges that were placed upon you, for instance, even with the peaceful protesters. You had literally peaceful protesters out there that were locked up for falsified charges that they were never ever involved in. You've had over 1,000 arrests since Michael Brown was murdered August 9, 2014. Some of those are still in jail today. Some have been charged with felonies that they never ever have that stuff off their record. So, some of them have been released from jail, but now it's difficult for them to find any type of adequate or legal job because of the stigmatism associated with, being in jail, protesting here in St. Louis, Missouri, post the Michael Brown murder. So a lot has not changed. Very little has changed. What we did get out of this was the fact that the police are now required to wear body cameras, but not all the time are they even wearing body cameras. So that still creates a huge issue for us.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be a question I was going to ask you. You know, my take on the body cameras. You know, after the Eric Garner incident, you know, Eric Garner was on video. He was murdered. Clear. That's exactly what the MEs say. He died. It was a homicide from asphyxiation. He was murdered. Video. To this day, the cops haven't even been brought. You know, they was exonerated. No indictment. Same thing. They had McCullough down there. They had this guy in Staten Island laying in bed with the cops. No indictment. Okay. Actually, the only cops that have been indicted in the last year, all of them been on video. But after Eric Garner, I said, wow. First they use a chokehold that's banned in the NYPD. Then you have the video. These guys are definitely, somebody's going to jail, even if it's just the guy that did the choke. And it was all exonerated. So how do you feel? Now, my take on video cameras have changed. I mean, now I look at it as it's just another piece. It's a piece. We can't just depend on the video.
Right. Well, see, if you look at the Eric Garner video, he was never arrested. He was never informed that he was going to be arrested in the first place. So those officers that murdered him, that assassinated him, they should have definitely been arrested. They should have definitely been charged with murder because that's exactly what they did with him. They put an illegal chokehold on him. They assassinated that brother. They never once said you're under arrest. They never, you know, read him his Miranda rights, which we know most cops don't do today anyway. But no one ever said that he was under arrest. Ever. Ever.
Okay, and with that, let's go to commercial. We'll be back with Ya Ami from St. Louis.
Stretching under sedation or manipulation under anesthesia is a very gentle, very precise procedure to very slowly release any scar tissue that is formed as a result of a traumatic injury. Many people ask, how does this work? Will I get hurt? Will you stretch me too far? We only stretch the body part to its normal range of motion. After completing the post-MUA rehabilitation program, it's very common that our patients say to us, hey, I can play ball with my kid again. Hey, I can bowl again. Hey, I can enjoy hiking again. This is what makes it rewarding to us as practitioners.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature, and Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
Hi, I'm Tatiana, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from heroin addiction. It was really, really hard, waking up in the morning, not knowing what to do, needing my next bag. I was so lost, but I'm here today to tell you that there is a solution. When I was in my active addiction, I didn't realize that there was another way of life. I thought that that was the only way, because it felt so good to get high, but it was all an illusion, and I didn't realize that. But today, being 4 years clean and sober, my life is absolutely amazing. I'm able to travel, I don't need a drink, I don't need a drug. I'm just happy being with myself. I couldn't understand for many years why was I doing this? It's because I was an addict, but I didn't know it. Today, many kids are becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol, but they don't know exactly what they're getting into until they're out of it. And it's our job, it's my job, to stand for these kids, stand for their recovery, and fight for their addiction. So I'm the president of Onward Forever, and I provide recovery services and support. And we're here to help. We're here to just listen. Anything that we can do to help. If you need me, this is how you get a hold of me. Please call 347-244-1550. 347-244-1550. I developed this company to help you, our families, and our community to fight this crisis on Long Island and in our nation. Thank you.
Welcome back to Corey Pegues Live. Getting some good information about what's going on down in St. Louis for Mr. Ya Ami. Well, I know that the Homer G. Phillips Hospital, there's been some issues with babies and organs being sold. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So Homer G. Phillips was a hospital here in St. Louis back in the day. And so some of what was happening there was when the black women would give birth to their child, the doctors would come in and say, your child has died, right? So if you all remember last year, they were talking about it. I think it was like 3 women, 30, 40 something years later actually came back because they always felt that something was wrong. And when they came back, they realized that, because they were looking for their family, they were told that their families had pretty much abandoned them. And then they actually realized what happened. Homer G. Phillips was actually telling the parents that their child had died, and in some cases, their children were also being sold on the black market. So that created a huge issue as well. Now, the same hospital, Homer G. Phillips, is now it has been closed down, and currently it houses senior citizens in that same building that used to be a hospital. So that's one thing that has changed with the Homer G. Phillips Old Hospital. A lot of people are not really aware of what transpired there. But now it's law that that it is supposed to remain a senior citizens building. You've got women that are really fighting from within the walls of the Homer G. Phillips building to keep it as a senior citizens home and to have additional senior citizens homes built in and surrounding that same ward. So that's what I wanted to kind of share with you guys regarding that. A few other issues that are on the table here, if I may. We want to talk a little bit about the disappearing black communities. Okay. The disappearing black communities has been a plan since the beginning. They've always wanted to annihilate and take out the black communities, right? Here in St. Louis, Missouri has always been a testing ground. There's always been an experimental ground and phase, even going back in the 1950s, 60s, and even 70s when they had the chemical warfare. I don't know, a lot of you may not even be familiar with the chemical warfare that they were spraying in the air over people and, in the black communities. And a lot of the black community residents, the women and men, they had these bumps and all this stuff, breakouts on their skins and with their children, being affected by it too, decades later. So this is something that I also spoke about and something that's been transpiring here as well. So St. Louis has always been one of the experimental testing grounds, not only just for chemical warfare, but also for gentrification and the annihilation of our people, taking our properties, and things of that nature. So this is what Ferguson and some of the other surrounding areas in St. Louis, Missouri is supposed to look like. I've got about 43 pages of documented information about what's being taught in the Washington University college right now by a white professor who's teaching what's called Black history. And so in these 43 pages of documentation I have, it's pretty much telling the white race of people that blacks are not just incompetent, that we are supposed to be feared, and that we are beneath them, and that if we move into their communities are going to be run amok. And the value in their community is going to come down. So do not accept blacks in their community. All of this stuff, I got all of these documentations, even from the Welfare Association, where they're talking about this stuff too. So letters and documents. But let's go to the disappearing communities. This is what Ferguson and some of the black communities is supposed to look like here in St. Louis. They're supposed to be destroyed. That's what they're trying to do. They want your communities destroyed.
Now, Ferguson, the community of Ferguson is over 80% minority.
Right. I think the actual breakdown is like 67% from like 2013 or somewhere around there. But you're right. The city of Ferguson is mostly African American.
Right.
Here's a document that I'd like to share with you guys. Now, the printing is kind of small, but you will see where it talks about the disappearing communities, and hopefully you guys will be able to zoom in on that. So I'll lift this up slowly for you all to see.
Okay, we got it.
And those are the communities dating back from the 50s up into present that are supposed to be destroyed. Ferguson was supposed to be destroyed last year prior to the murder of Michael Brown. When the murder of Michael Brown happened, then a lot of that was put on halt. So they had to put that on hold temporarily. The feds, they have a lot of money invested in Ferguson and the surrounding areas. and they've got plans to get rid of the blacks in Ferguson. And again, most people are not privy to this information. The 43 pages of documentation that I have before me today, if you're black, you cannot go anywhere and get a copy of this. You cannot. It's not on the books. It's not anywhere. It's not in the government. It's
so where's this information from?
It's specifically being taught by a white university professor at Washington University. It's being taught under black history by a white professor that has about 2 or 3 blacks at the most in his class. And this is what they're teaching in their program, in their class. This is what's called the United Welfare Association. And I'll share this with you all, what's being said in here and what they're teaching, what this white professor who's teaching. Now, the same white professor, he's on Facebook, he's in social media, he's around a black community, he's heavily involved in a black community, he'll meet with black leaders and pick them for information and all of that. But he's coming to the black community as a friend. Right? He's coming to the black leaders as a friend, and they don't know that he's in the college as a professor talking and speaking against the black race of people and teaching and promoting white supremacy in Washington University. It's called the United Welfare Association. It was dated February 5th, 1915. Now, again, they're still talking about this and they're still teaching this information in Washington University. It has a Missouri Historical Society of St. Louis seal on it, so it's an official document. It says, "Dear neighbor, do you realize that at any time you are liable to suffer an irreparable loss due to the coming of Negroes into the block in which you live or in which you own property? The race question is one of the vital interests to property owners. A colored resident in your immediate neighborhood destroys the value of your property immeasurably. Perhaps you do not think that your neighborhood will be invaded. Neither do you believe that you are going to have a fire when you pay your fire insurance. While perhaps you have not been affected by this class of people coming into your neighborhood, you surely want protection against this growing danger, which is more menacing than fire or any other elements. At present, you have no remedy in the matter of this kind. The United Welfare Association, composed of representatives from the organizations appearing below, was organized to secure the enactment of this necessary laws that will effectively check the inroads of Negroes into white residents' districts."
So yeah, okay. I think we pretty much get like where you're going with this. And you said that document's from 1915, and I'm pretty sure there are some communities that don't want people that don't look like them to come in their communities. There's communities here in New York City also, and New York State, California, Detroit, all over the country. However, I can't and don't foresee that somebody could just come in and just wipe out the entire town. I just can't forecast and see that in 2015. However, that's good information that you put out here for the people to grasp and start thinking and get their minds churning to think of that. But let's go on. I want you to talk about Black Lives Matter now. So
sure.
Now, hold on. How did the Black Lives Matter movement start? I think it started around with Trayvon Martin. After the Trayvon Martin murder, they started talking about Black Lives Matter. And the gist of it, when it started, it was great. It's like Black Lives Matter, you know, basically all lives matter. But we're talking Black Lives Matter because black people, the unarmed black people, are the one that's getting killed by cops. So when people say all lives matter, I would say, hey, well, there's no Asians getting killed by unarmed Asians getting killed. Few unarmed white people getting killed by cops. But Black Lives Matter, it started off, it was a great thing. But now it has moved into another direction. Not that the Black Lives Matter movement where it started was good, but you got some people that's infiltrated the organization or using the organization and saying some stuff that I don't think, like the hierarchy. And is there a hierarchy in Black Lives Matter? Or it's just different chapters all over the country? There's no universal, like, president of Black Lives Matter, right? You know, recording secretary, you know, like an organization. Is it? And what's the movement about now?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, let's start with the 150 million Africans that were brought here during the the Atlantic slave trade, right? Let's talk about that stuff, right? Because that has trickled down and that has grossly affected the mentality of Black lives here in America today as we know it. So when we talk about the organization Black Lives Matter, I founded that organization. So there is a legal organization, Black Lives Matter. And you're speaking to the original founder of Black Lives Matter. Now, it's true that you also mentioned that Black Lives Matter has been infiltrated. It has been. It has been infiltrated primarily by 3 women that you see out there in public saying that, well, 2 of them are lesbians and one's bi or one's straight. So it has been infiltrated. Right? These 3 women came into St. Louis, Missouri, the end of August, under the name of some other organization. They came into Harrisstowe University, speaking to Professor Renato Anderson and others, trying to get their foot in the door. Right? They came here getting funding under the guise of being freedom fighters, under various other organizations. Once they got their foot in the door, August 30th, they came here August 27th. August 30th, we had a national call to action. We had our march here in St. Louis, Missouri, from Canfield in Ferguson, Missouri, where Michael Brown was executed by the cops. And we ended up marching from there to the park, and then later some of us went to the police station. And so they came here 27th to 28th under the name of another organization, and then 2 days later, they put on T-shirts saying Black Lives Matter, right? And this was, mind you, this is when the media was here. This is when all the media all over the world was here in St. Louis, Missouri, right, to cover what was going on here with Michael Brown, with the murder of Michael Brown. During this time, Michael Brown was murdered. You also had other unarmed blacks that were also murdered. There was at least 7 other unarmed black men that was murdered. One sister was shot in the forehead. She survived. She was shot in the forehead by a sniper, and she survived. So this is what happened. You had those 3 women coming here under the name of other organizations, and they infiltrated our movement here. They capitalized off of the momentum, they capitalized off of the media, and they exploited the movement, the people, and the movement just became a moment for them.
Yeah, well, right now, I believe that they are almost like nationally recognized as the founders for the movement of Black Lives Matter. And how did that come about?
What they founded was the hashtag. They never founded any organization. They founded the hashtag Black Lives Matter. That's all they founded. They never founded the movement. They have never put in the work. They have never put in the sweat, the tears. They have never been out there on the battlefield with us at all, under no circumstances. Black Lives Matter started here in St. Louis, Missouri, and it became in existence as a result of the murder of Michael Brown Jr. That's the history of Black Lives Matter.
Okay, now and let's talk about in Ferguson. There's a new police chief out in Ferguson, Chief Anderson, right? He was just brought on maybe last month and a half ago. I actually know him. We was a part of a national organization together when I was a cop. He's a pretty mild-mannered guy. nice guy. I know the guy, but you know, I never worked for him. I just know him from being at conventions and stuff. How's things working out with him being there now?
There's still a large level of skepticism, although they've had a change in administration, so to speak.
Right.
The problems are still prevalent. The problems are still in our face. There still has not been any justice. The laws still have not changed. The situations are still going on here. Peaceful protesters are still being arrested. So nothing has really changed.
Do you think
nothing has really changed?
Do you think that, now I want your honest opinion, do you think that the Ferguson Police Department should be disbanded and St. Louis suck up the manpower and take over that area? Because that, you know, that's not unusual to happen. There's police departments that have been disbanded and the next county will take it over. Since there was such an inherent and deep distrust with the police of Ferguson, there was, you know, some controversial shootings, some murders, police-involved murders, and the distrust, you know, you're talking about the summonses and the protests and the militarization of the police department coming in with tanks, tear gas and all this. How can they fix that? Do you think, I mean, I'm almost of the mindset saying, hey, that police department need to be disbanded and have the St. Louis County Police Department cover it. How do you feel about that?
That's certainly something that needs to happen. It needs to be disbanded, it needs to be dissolved, effective immediately, period. I don't think that St. Louis County should be the ones taking it over because, again, St. Louis County also assisted Ferguson Police Department with the militarized riot gear and the chemical warfare that even President Obama spoke against and said that there should never, ever be chemical warfare used against citizens in the U.S., especially peaceful demonstrators and protesters, which 99% of us was peaceful demonstrators here.
Well, I'm saying St. Louis. I don't really know the layout out there, but I know that's the biggest department down there. And they work closely with Ferguson. It would have to be probably Ferguson, right? It would probably have to be St. Louis, right?
Correct. Yeah, it should certainly be taken over by another jurisdiction. And Ferguson Police Department, as we know it, should certainly be dissolved and disbanded immediately. There's no need for them. There's no need for them at all. I don't know if you're aware, but post Michael Brown's murder, that the city of Ferguson, they racked in millions of dollars. Darren Wilson, after he executed Michael Brown, he became a millionaire within 6 months. He raised $500,000 within 3 months. He became a millionaire and he retired.
Yeah, well, you know, usually when these police officers are involved in these crimes, the local FOP or the union, they immediately put up money for these guys, ask for, you know, do a GoFund or whatever, what have you. So that's really not unusual. I don't know what happens to the money, if the money actually goes to the person or they just put it back in the kitty for the next big case. But it's something that needs to be looked at. And before we go, give me, because you have this very powerful video and it runs for about 7 minutes, and I want the people to really sit back and embrace this video because I've looked at that video more than a few occasions. Talk about that video. Let's talk about that video, y'all.
Sure. So the video is only part 1 of about part 3 series. And what we're capturing is 69 of the unarmed African-American men and women that have been murdered by cops. So that's just covering 69 of them. We're dealing with the first 69, and then we're going to go, you know, back from 1999 up into presently, because we know thousands of black men and women have been murdered by cops. We know that that murders happen also in the correction facility by corrections officers as well. And so we're exposing all of that, and we're showing the world that enough is enough, and that we're standing up and we're speaking out against these forms of injustices, and we charge genocide. we charge genocide. And so that's what we are in the process of doing. We are teaming up with other people and organizations to bring these charges against the U.S. We're taking these charges directly to the UN so that the UN can bring charges and sanctions against the U.S. for genocide, for war crimes. That's what we're doing. So you'll see the video. It talks about it shows you pictures of some of the victims of police brutality. If you go to our website, we also have a website, www.humanrightsjc.com. That's www.humanrightsjc.com. And if you look at the National Registry, click on the word National Registry, you'll see our National Registry page there. And the purpose of the National Registry is to expose police for police brutality and to expose cops for murdering unarmed citizens in America. That's phase one. Phase two is to promote missing persons. So any African American or any one of the from the black community, they got their child missing, then they can put their child's picture and all that information on our national registry too. So I encourage your viewers and your listeners to check out our website, www.humanrightsjc.com.
Okay, well, yeah, listen, this was a very, very informative interview. I will definitely bring you back on the show. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you had to move some things around to make this happen today. And here at Corey Pegues Live, you're always welcome. Anytime you want to come on to give an opinion. And the sad thing is that the sad thing is that there will be other unarmed men, black, white, Chinese, killed by the police. It's just what it is. And there also will be cops that get murdered. It's just a society that we live in.
And you know, we're going to do what we can to fight for the victims' families. You know, we have to continue the good fight. If we don't do it, no one else will.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on, and we're going to go right into your video right now. I appreciate you. And before we go to the video, I want to tell the people again, make sure you purchase my book, Once a Cop. Go to simonandschuster.com. It's on Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble, Once a Cop. Just type in Once a Cop. It'll pop up. You can also find me on Facebook at Corey Pegues, CoreyPegues, Twitter, CPegues, and Facebook, again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Instagram is cpegues9098. Thank you very much. And let's go to the video.
you.